Do you believe in fate? A poor village girl was made to marry a hunter and became the richest woman in the area. That morning, Maya got into an old cart. She was taken away as payment. She had no choice. She said no goodbyes. She saw no future. The whole village watched in silence. They were sure she would vanish into the trees. They thought she would be swallowed by a marriage with no love. But Maya, the hunter, and the whole village could not imagine what was about to happen. Because fate, when it comes, changes everything. It changes slowly, quietly, but for sure. What started with pain, fear, and silence ended up making Maya the most powerful and admired woman around. Do you want to know how a poor, forgotten girl turned her story around and gained a wealth much greater than money? Then stay with me until the end. This is a story you will never forget. It was early. The sun had not yet cleared the shadow of the bamboo trees, but the sound of footsteps already broke the quiet on the dry ground. The cart, old and noisy, stood by the house gate. It looked like it was waiting for a dead body. Maya's father walked back and forth. He was pretending to be busy so he would not have to look anyone in the eye. Her mother sat on the doorstep. Her hands were in her lap. Her eyes were empty. The cloth on her shoulder looked like a white flag of surrender. Maya stepped out of the house. She had a small bundle under her arm. She carried so little, it was like she was not bringing a life with her at all. Just a faded blue dress she wore to the market, worn-out sandals, a clay bottle with cold water. No gift for a new family, no smile, no blessing. As she climbed onto the cart, the scarf covering her hair slipped off. The wind took it, trying to hide it in the bushes. No one bent down to pick it up. Not her father, not her mother, not the silent ant leaning against the tree. In that moment, you could feel the weight of the decision. Maya was not being taken as a bride. She was being given away like a payment, like someone handing over a goat to settle a debt. An old neighbor woman crossed her arms and let out a loud sigh, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's going to become the hunter's shadow," she said. No one replied, because deep down, everyone knew it was true. The cart left slowly. The sound of the wheels on the dry ground grew quieter and quieter until it was gone. But the silence that stayed behind was even louder. The mother went inside and locked the door. For 3 days, no fire was lit in that house. No pot made a sound. No clothes were washed. On the clay floor in front of the small altar, the woman drew 3 lines with ash. It was like she was erasing her daughter's name from the memory of that home. Up ahead, on the forest path, Maya looked at everything with dry eyes. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not even shake. It was like her body had left, but her soul had stayed behind. It was clinging to a fence post, watching from far away. The hunter was a man with wide shoulders and a hard face. He just chewed tobacco. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask her name. He just held the reins and headed back toward the forest. They say that on that day, when the cart passed by the round stone where the children played, time stood still for a second. The wind blew differently. A cloud covered the sun for a moment. It was like even the sky knew that something was being taken without being asked. In the forest, the silence was different. There were no neighbors at the window, no smell of bread baking, no sound of roosters fighting. Just trees, shadows, and animals. Maya stepped down from the cart with her eyes on the ground. The hunter pointed at the hut, and walked away without a word. She went in slowly. The floor was packed dirt. The roof leaked in one corner. A thin mat was stretched near the dying fire. That would be her place. No party, no blessing, no one. The next morning at dawn, Maya went to the river to get water. Her hands shook. Every step reminded her of the sound of the cart rolling away. She knew she would not be coming back any time soon. She also knew the village would forget her. It is easy to forget poor women, even more so when they leave in silence. But fate never forgets. It walks slowly, but it sees everything. And Maya, even in silence, had already begun to write her story, not with words, but with the heavy silence that had followed her since the cart, because that day she was not just taken like a goat into the woods, she was planted. And what grew from that, no one could have imagined. The forest has its own way of speaking. It does not shout. It does not rush. But everything there has weight. The sound of the wind in the leaves, the snap of a dry branch under a foot, the chirping of birds that fly away when they sense sadness in the air. Maya learned this in the first few days, not with words, but with her body, because those who live in silence hear differently. The hunter's house was made of clay and straw like many in the area, but inside there was a coldness that did not come from the shade. He left early with a bow on his back and a knife in his hand. He came back late, smelling of sweat and dead animals. He always drank. His bottle was a loyal friend, more present than any act of care. He didn't ask anything. He didn't say anything. When he looked at her, it was like he was seeing an object, as if she were just another pot, another piece of the house. Maya did what had to be done. She cooked with steady hands, but her eyes stayed down. She knew where his weapons were. She knew the smell of the leather on his traps. She knew the sound of the rope being stretched in the yard. Fear was not a scream. It was a presence. It lived in the air, in her dry throat, in the way she held her breath when she heard footsteps at the door. That first night he slept drunk. His body fell heavily onto the mat. His snoring sounded like choked thunder. Maya lay far away near the fire. She covered herself with a thin mat and cried, but she made no sound. There was no one to hear, no one who cared. Her crying was just another noise lost in the middle of the woods. And those who live in the woods know this. What is not heard is not helped. A few days later, she broke a pot by accident. She was washing it at the river. It slipped from her hand and cracked on a stone. It was an old pot. The edges were already chipped, but that was enough. He came home that afternoon and found out about the pot. What happened next was quick. A hard pull on her arm, a slap that snapped her head to the side, a sharp pain that went from her shoulder to her soul. He didn't say sorry. He didn't yell. He just turned his back and went to bed. Maya stayed there on her knees. Her arm hurt. Her eyes were locked on the cracked pot. In that moment, she understood something she had not fully known before. No one was coming to save her. No one was coming to take her back. If she was going to survive, she would have to learn to listen to her own body before it stopped speaking to her. Time in the forest does not follow a clock. The sun is in charge. The rain counts the days. And so the weeks passed. Maya awoke before the light. She washed her face in the river. She rubbed healing leaves on her sore arm. She started her day. She cooked, washed, and swept the yard. At night she lay on her corner of the mat. Her thoughts were heavier than her body, but something inside her would not be quiet. A small feeling, almost invisible, but alive, like a seed sprouting in dry soil.
She began to notice the forest's paths. She started to pay attention to the smell of the leaves. She learned the right time for smoking meat. She saw the hour the birds landed on the branches. Without realizing it, she was learning, not as a wife, but as a woman who watches in order to survive. The pain in her arm became a mark, not just on her skin, but in her memory. A fine, crooked line that seemed to say, "Here, a decision was born." Every time she looked at it, something inside Maya grew stronger. She did not yell, she did not talk back, but she did not forget either. And within her silence, her scream was growing, one that would sooner or later find a way to come out, even if it was through the smell of smoke or the steadiness of her hands. Because a woman's body may be beaten, it may go quiet, it may even bow before fear. But the soul, once it decides to stand tall, cannot be held down. And Maya, without the hunter knowing it, was already starting to lift her head from within. In the village, no one spoke of Maya anymore. This is often the case with poor women who vanish from sight. It was like she had never existed. Life went on among the backyards, clay pots, and clotheslines. But in the forest, far from eyes and whispers, something different was beginning to grow. She woke before the sun, alone on her feet, even before the rooster announced the day. With a cloth tied around her hair and bare feet, Maya stepped quietly out of the hut. She walked toward the forest with a silence that was not fear, it was focus. In her eyes there was no longer only pain, there was a sharp awareness, like someone teaching herself the way to survive. She started by watching the tracks on the ground, animal footprints, the types of leaves that fell from trees, how long it took meat to dry on the smoke rack. She ran her hands over tree bark. She learned which trees made good tea, which kept mosquitoes away, which scented bathwater. She discovered it all on her own, because that was how her life had always been, learning in silence, living on the edges, listening to what others ignored. In the afternoons, she went to the river with the other women who lived near the forest. She carried her bundle of clothes like anyone else, but the difference was in her manner. While the others talked loudly and laughed about husbands and children, Maya stayed quiet. She washed clothes with steady movements, never interrupting. Until one day, she laughed. A small laugh, but it echoed on the rocks like a long-forgotten bell. The oldest woman in the group stopped scrubbing her blouse. She looked at Maya and said quietly, "That is the first time I have seen you laugh." In that moment, everyone stopped. The sound of water, of soap slapping against stones, it all paused. It was like the world knew that a piece of the past had just cracked. Maya smiled again, this time without shrinking back. She simply replied, "I did not even remember what my laugh sounded like." On the way back from the river, she passed a clay house where a man was trading soap for bananas. She watched and said nothing. But the next morning, while the hunter lay passed out, she skinned an animal he had brought home. She cleaned it. She treated it with ash and special leaves. She hung it over the smoke rack and watched as the meat took on color. In less than 2 weeks, she had already mastered the right way to smoke it. She discovered that wrapping the meat in banana leaves kept the flavor longer. When she took it to the town market, pretending it was her husband's order, she came back with her hands full. Soap, salt, and a piece of floral fabric that she hid at the bottom of her bundle. The hunter never asked. He never noticed. He thought it all came from the small garden or favors from neighbors. He did not see, because a man who never sees a woman as a person does not notice when she begins to grow. In the forest, Maya stopped being the shadow. She started walking with a straighter back.
Her eyes no longer looked at the ground. She still did not talk back. She still slept at the edge of the mat. She still felt fear when he raised his voice. But inside her something was being built. It was not revenge. It was not pride. It was a voice. With time, even the forest women began to notice. When she passed by, they would say, "That one learned to walk with the animals, but never lost her woman's touch." They started asking her for advice for herbs, for help with burns or their children's fevers. And Maya helped with the same calm she used to chop wood or strain coffee. No one expected her to change. If anyone imagined she might, they thought it would come from being tired, from sorrow, from giving up. But no, Maya was changing with strength. She did not run from pain, but she did not let it shape her either. And that is something the world does not know how to handle. Because when a woman starts to see herself with her own eyes, without needing a mirror, without waiting for praise, without asking permission, even the forest around her learns to respect her steps. And Maya, even if she did not know it yet, was already walking a path with no return. At the back of the yard, between the cassava plant and an old fallen tree, Maya built a small structure of branches and leaves. Nothing big, nothing flashy, just a low rack of vine and bamboo covered with dry straw and stones around it. There she began to smoke the meat with more care. She used the right wood, the right amount of time, and a secret blend of forest herbs only she knew. She learned this in the silence of her solitary walks. Every piece of meat gained a flavor unlike any other, a smell that drifted through the woods and made even the animals stop and sniff. She cut it into strips. She wrapped it carefully in soft banana leaves and tied it with thread made from palm fiber. No plastic, no labels, but when her hands handed it over, whoever received it felt there was more than just food. There was care. There was soul. It all started by chance. A traveler from the city stopped to buy a piece of meat. He said he had never tasted anything like it. He took it home, and a week later he came back. He brought money, seasoning to trade, and a request. He wanted more. He said his wife refused to cook with any other kind of meat. Now, he said, his neighbors were asking where that flavor came from. Maya listened in silence. She smiled only with her eyes. She took the items, nodded in thanks, and returned to work. That night, while the hunter slept with dirty feet and an empty bottle, she drew lines in the dirt with a piece of charcoal. She marked how many cuts of meat she could prepare per week. She counted on her fingers how much that would trade for: soap, flour, kerosene. In the end, she set aside a small pile of dry leaves that smelled like a better future. The business grew slowly, like all things that start right. No rush, no noise. Maya did not speak at the market. She just showed. Everyone who tasted it came back. That is how she started trading meat for land. An old man, no longer able to work his field, offered her a small plot near the river in exchange for meat for a year. She accepted. She made the deal in silence. No paper, just a word and a handshake. Over time, other women began to ask, "What seasoning is this, Maya? Where is that leaf from?" She would smile and change the subject. Not out of meanness, but because she knew that this knowledge was what kept her alive. It was what set her apart from being forgotten. And in a land where poor women are easily forgotten, knowledge is protection. The hunter, out of place amid all it, remained unaware. He thought the house smelled better, but he didn't care. When he was hungry, he ate. When thirsty, he drank. And when people in the village asked about him, he would say everything was under control. Little did he know that the woman he carried as a shadow was already lighting paths.
One overcast afternoon, Maya looked at the pile of stacked banana leaves and felt a knot in her chest. It was not sadness, it was pride. Pride with no one to tell. Her father had handed her over like goods. Her mother had stayed silent out of fear. Her husband ignored her like a piece of furniture. But there, between smoke and leaves, she was creating a world that was hers alone. Little by little, she began saving part of what she earned. She buried it in clay pots, sealed with wax, hidden in holes protected by stones. It was not much, but it was hers. Every coin saved, every piece of cloth bought, every handful of salt reserved was a line written in the new story she was telling. Not on paper, but in dignity. And even if no one saw it, even if no one celebrated, she kept going. Because she knew that those who wait for applause from the village do not last, but those who plant with faith harvest with honor. And there, between leaves and smoke, Maya was already building a kingdom no man would understand until it was too late.